Welcome back to the Deep Dive. I want to start today's session by asking you to picture um, a magic trick.
A magic trick. Okay, I'm with you so far.
You know the kind I'm talking about,
Yep.
where the magician waves a hand, there's this puff of smoke, and then bam, suddenly there's a tiger in a cage that was, like, totally empty 2 seconds ago.
Right. Misdirection and spectacle. I didn't realize we were doing a magic podcast today.
Well, bear with me on this, because in the tech world, we are constantly watching that exact trick.
How so?
We see the result, right? The incredible app that scales to millions of users overnight, or the seamless cloud migration.
Or a company that just pivots its entire business model in a month without, breaking a sweat.
Exactly. And we look at that and we applaud the technology.
Yeah.
We obsess over the servers, the code, the microservices architecture. We think the magic is in the machine.
It's a natural assumption to make. I mean, if the car is driving fast, you look at the engine.
Right. But the research we're digging into today suggests we're staring at the wrong hand.
Or at the very least, we're missing the invisible hand that's making all that technology even possible.
Yes. We're going to be talking about the ghost in the machine.
And that ghost is leadership. Which, I know sounds significantly less exciting than a new Kubernetes cluster.
It does. It really does. It sounds like one of those motivational posters in a break room.
With eagles soaring over a mountain.
Yes. But before anyone even thinks about hitting skip, I want to hit you with a statistic that, honestly, it made me stop cold when I was reading through our source materials.
Okay.
This comes from Gartner. It was a prediction made a few years back, looking toward 2020, but it really just set the stage for everything we're seeing now.
Right.
They predicted that 50% of the chief information officers who would not transform their team's capabilities would be displaced from their organization's digital leadership teams.
Displaced. I just love the corporate euphemisms.
It's a very polite way of saying fired, isn't it?
It is. Or, promoted to a special project where you can't touch anything important ever again.
Right.
But the brutality of that stat is what's important. It implies that technical leadership isn't just about keeping the lights on anymore.
It's not about just making sure the email server works.
Exactly. It's about evolution. And if you, as a leader, are not evolving the capabilities of your team, you are effectively becoming obsolete.
And that tracks with what we all feel in the industry, right?
Yeah.
For the longest time, the prevailing wisdom was that if you just bought the right software.
The Magic Quadrant tool.
Yes, the Magic Quadrant tool. Or if you just hired the smartest, 10x engineers from Stanford, then success would just naturally happen.
The checkbook strategy, as some people call it. Just
Yeah.
throw money at the problem.
Exactly. But the data, and we are going to talk a lot about hard data today, it shows there's this human variable that acts as a multiplier.
A multiplier.
And if that variable is 0, it doesn't matter how much you spend on the tech. The end result is 0.
It's the difference between owning a Ferrari and actually knowing how to drive it.
So here is our mission for this deep dive.
No.
We are going to unpack the specific role of leaders and managers.
Okay.
And I want to be really specific here because I can feel the skepticism radiating through the headphones already. We are not talking about vague boss skills.
Wow.
We're not talking about being charismatic or tall or having a really firm handshake.
No, thank goodness.
Yeah.
We are looking at a very specific, scientifically validated model called transformational leadership.
And our source for this is Chapter 11 from a research-based text titled Leaders and Managers.
Right.
And this is important. This is not a biography of Steve Jobs. It's not a collection of, here's what worked for me, anecdotes from some tech CEO. This is rigorous statistical analysis.
That is what attracted me to this source. The whole great man theory of history, where we just, worship a singular genius, is frankly terrible for actual learning.
Because you can't replicate it.
You can't replicate Steve Jobs, but what you can replicate is a set of behaviors that have been statistically proven to correlate with high performance across thousands of different teams.
So we have data on team culture, performance metrics, and a really fascinating diagram, we'll get into it later, figure 11.1, that literally connects the dots between how a leader acts and whether or not a server crashes on Black Friday.
It really is that connected. It's not a fuzzy line.
Okay, so let's bring it back to the listener. Why should you care? Maybe you're not a CEO. Maybe you're a junior developer or a project manager, or you just work inside a hierarchy.
Well, if you manage a team, this is your playbook. This is the manual. But even if you don't manage anyone, if you're an individual contributor, This explains your reality.
How so?
It explains why your team might be struggling to ship code while the team sitting right next to you is flying high. It explains why you might feel burned out. And frankly, it challenges that really romantic idea that technology changes happen purely from the grassroots level.
Oh, the rebels in the basement narrative. We love that
Yeah,
story.
I do.
The rogue engineers who are fixing the company, despite the clueless managers.
It makes for a great movie. But the data shows that while grassroots change can happen, it is incredibly difficult to sustain.
It's like trying to grow a garden in concrete.
That's a perfect analogy. True, sustainable transformation usually requires a specific kind of leadership providing air cover.
Okay, let's get into it then. We need to define our terms, because leadership is one of those words that has been just abused to death.
It's a buzzword graveyard, for sure.
The source material starts with a real challenge. It says, being a leader doesn't mean you have people reporting to you on an organizational chart.
This is so critical. In this context, leadership is defined as the act of inspiring and motivating. That's it.
So you can have a manager title on your business card and display absolutely zero leadership.
We have all worked for that person. Absolutely. Conversely, you can be a junior engineer with no direct reports at all and display immense leadership.
But for the purpose of the research, they needed a way to, measure this. So they turned to this concept of transformational leadership. But before we define that, can you help us distinguish it from another popular term we hear all the time in Agile circles? Servant leadership.
Right, and that's a good comparison to make because they're related but different. Servant leadership has really been the gold standard for a while.
Yeah, it's very popular.
The core philosophy is that the leader exists to serve the team. Their job is to remove blockers, carry water, make sure the team has coffee, and clear requirements. It's a very bottom-up approach.
Which sounds great. I mean, who wouldn't want a boss who serves them?
Exactly. And it is great, don't get me wrong. It focuses on the followers' development and their performance. But transformational leadership is slightly different. It often includes that supportive element, but the vector is different. Transformational leadership focuses on getting followers to identify with the organization and engage in support of organizational objectives.
Wait, okay, that sounds a little corporate. Servant leadership is, I'm here to help you. Transformational leadership sounds a bit like, I'm here to get you to do what the company wants.
I can see how it sounds that way, but there's a really important nuance there. It's not about compliance, it's about alignment.
Okay, unpack that.
Servant leadership focuses on the individual player. Transformational leadership focuses on the mission. It's the difference between a coach saying, I'll help you practice your swing, and a coach saying, I'm going to show you why winning this championship will change all of our lives, so let's get out there and do it.
Ah, okay, I see the distinction now. It's about binding the team to a larger shared purpose.
Precisely. And the research we're looking at chose this model because it turns out to be more predictive of performance outcomes, specifically in these high change technology contexts.
So how do we measure it? I mean, this can't just be a feeling.
Right. The research uses a specific model by Rafferty and Griffin, and it breaks transformational leadership down into 5 very specific measurable dimensions.
Okay, I want to walk through these, but I want to be critical here. Because some of these, on the surface, they sound a little like fluff.
Let's test them. Let's kick the tires.
All right, dimension number 1. Vision.
The foundation. This is where it all starts.
Okay, but let me play devil's advocate for a second.
Yeah.
The text says this involves having a clear understanding of where the organization is going, and it specifically mentions a 5-year horizon.
It does.
In tech.
Yeah.
5 years. I mean, 5 years ago, we were barely talking about generative AI in the mainstream. Trying to predict 5 years out in software feels a lot like reading tea leaves.
It does seem impossible if you view vision as a rigid, detailed roadmap. If you think vision means in 2030 we will be using version 4.7 of this specific database, then yes, that's absolutely ridiculous. You'll be wrong in 6 months.
So what does a valid 5-year vision look like, then?
It's about identity and destination, not the specific route you take to get there. It's a leader saying, in 5 years, we will be the premier platform for enterprise data analytics. Or, in 5 years, we will be a fully cloud-native organization that can release features safely on a daily basis.
So it's the compass heading, not the turn-by-turn direction.
Yeah, exactly. And think about the friction on a team that lacks this. If you don't know where you're going in 5 years, every single small decision becomes a huge debate.
Oh, yeah.
Do we build this new feature, or do we refactor this old piece of code? Do we buy this new tool, or do we try to build our own? Without that long-term view, you just default to short-term thinking.
You just patch the code because it's faster today.
Right, even if it creates a complete nightmare for the person who's going to be working here 3 years from now.
That makes a lot of sense. The vision acts as a kind of tiebreaker for all those daily decisions.
Ideally, yes. It reduces decision fatigue for the whole team.
Okay, that one passes the test.
Yeah.
Dimension number 2, inspirational communication.
This is the delivery mechanism for the vision we just talked about.
Again, this one sounds a bit like corporate cheerleading to me. Is this just about giving good speeches at the all-hands meeting?
It can be, but it's much deeper than that. The research defines it specifically as how you communicate during times of uncertainty. And tech is, 90% uncertainty.
At least.
When a big reorg happens, or a project gets canceled, or the market crashes, how does the leader frame that event?
The "we are all doomed" memo versus the "this is a new challenge" memo.
Right, but it has to be authentic. It's about framing change as an opportunity rather than a threat. If a leader says, look, we have to move to the cloud because the CEO said so, that's compliance. It's boring. No one's excited.
Right, you're just following orders.
But if they say, we are moving to the cloud so we can ship features faster than our competitor and actually win this market, that's inspirational. It gives the why. It connects the tedious daily work to that bigger vision.
Okay, I'm sold. Dimension number 3, intellectual stimulation.
This is my absolute favorite, especially for knowledge work. This is the big one.
The text defines this as challenging followers to think about old problems in new ways.
It is the absolute antidote to the phrase, but we've always done it this way.
I can see that, but isn't that also kind of annoying?
Yeah.
If I'm a developer and I'm deep in the zone just trying to code, and my boss comes in and says, hey, have you thought about rethinking your basic assumptions? I might just want them to go away so I can finish my work.
It can be annoying if it's done poorly, for sure. Like if it's just disruption for disruption's sake.
Right.
But imagine the alternative. Imagine a leader who never asks that. What happens to that team?
You just end up maintaining legacy code forever.
Forever. A transformational leader is the one who asks the dangerous questions. Why does this deployment process take 3 days? Why do we require manual approval from 3 different VPs for a simple text change on the website?
So they create a safe space to challenge the status quo.
They don't just create the space, they actively demand it. They encourage the team to use their brains, not just their hands. They value the idea over the hierarchy. That's intellectual stimulation.
Okay. Dimension 4, supportive leadership.
This is the human element. We can't forget this. This is considering the personal needs and feelings of your team members.
Which is very often the first thing to go out the window when a deadline is looming.
Oh, absolutely. I don't care if you're tired, if your kid is sick, just ship the code. That is the exact opposite of supportive leadership.
Right.
Supportive leadership recognizes that you cannot get sustained high performance out of burnt-out people. It's checking in. It's acting as a buffer against all the organizational stress that's coming down from above.
And finally, number 5, personal recognition.
Praising achievement. And the research is very specific here. Personally complimenting outstanding work.
So does the Employee of the Month plaque count?
Usually no. That feels generic and, it's often a rotation. This is about specificity.
Give me an example.
Instead of, good job this month, it's, hey, Sarah, I saw how you refactored that login module. That was really elegant code. It saved us from a bunch of future bugs and made things easier for the whole team. That lands so much harder than a Starbucks gift card.
It shows you're actually paying attention.
It shows you're paying attention and you understand the work.
So we have vision, inspirational communication, intellectual stimulation, supportive leadership, and personal recognition. The big 5.
The big 5, that's the model.
So the researchers surveyed thousands of teams to see if these traits actually mattered in the real world. I'm guessing the answer is yes.
The answer is a resounding, statistically significant yes.
Okay.
The high-performing teams, we're talking the ones who are deploying code constantly, with low failure rates, high stability, they consistently reported having leaders with the strongest behaviors across all 5 of those dimensions.
All 5. So you can't just be the visionary jerk like we see in the movies. The genius who has the vision but treats everyone poorly.
The data strongly suggests that is not a sustainable model for high performance. You might get these short-term bursts of brilliance, but you won't get sustained elite performance over the long haul.
And what about the flip side? What about the bad leaders?
Well, look at this. Teams with leadership that scored in the bottom 1/3, so the bottom 33% of leadership scores, they were only half as likely to be high performers.
Wow. That is a massive penalty. So if you have a mediocre leader, you have statistically slashed your team's potential by 50% right out of the gate.
Correct. Your odds are just cut in half. And let's talk about retention for a second.
Yep.
There was a huge correlation with the employee net promoter score, which basically just the answer to the question, would you recommend this place as a great place to work? Transformational leaders create environments where people are happy, they're engaged, and they stay.
Which is huge financially because replacing a senior engineer costs, what, 1.5, twice their salary?
At least. Plus all the lost institutional knowledge that walks out the door with them.
Okay, so up to this point, the story seems pretty simple. Be a good leader, do the 5 things, and your team wins.
You would think so. It seems like a pretty straight line.
But, and here is where the deep dive really earns its name, there is a major twist in the data.
A very significant one.
You would naturally assume that if you take a team and you give them a leader who scores in the top 10% for all these traits, a super leader, let's call him, that team would automatically be a high performer.
And that's the logical chain, right? Great leader leads to great success. A implies B.
But the source says, not necessarily.
No. In fact, they found that teams with the top 10% of transformational leaders were not automatically better than average if they lacked something else.
So you can have the vision, the inspiration, the support, all of it. And your team can still just be,
You can still have a low-performing team. Absolutely.
Okay, we absolutely have to unpack this. This brings us to section 2 of our discussion. And that mysterious diagram, figure 11.1, explain this paradox to me. How can you have a great leader and still get average performance?
It all comes down to what the researchers call an indirect effect. This is the crucial insight of the entire chapter, really.
Okay, an indirect effect. Break that down.
Leadership is an input. It is not the mechanism of the work itself. Think of it this way. You can be the most inspiring coach in the NFL. You can give the best, most moving locker room speeches. You can love your players and support them. But if your team refuses to lift weights and they don't study the playbook and they try to play barefoot,
You're going to get crushed.
you're going to lose every single time. The leadership flows into the practices. So the diagram, figure 11.1, shows transformational leadership in a box on the far left. And then you see these arrows flowing from that box into 2 main categories of capabilities.
Which are?
Technical practices and lean practices.
So the leader doesn't directly make the software fast. The leader creates the environment where the team can adopt the habits and practices that make the software fast.
Precisely. The leader is the catalyst, not the chemical reaction itself.
Let's look at that technical practices box in the diagram. It lists things like test automation, deployment automation, trunk-based development, shift left on security, and so on.
The core tenets of modern software engineering.
Right. Now, for the non-engineers listening, or even for the engineers who maybe nod along but don't really do these things in practice, we should probably clarify why these are hard. Why do you need leadership air cover to do something like test automation? Isn't that just part of doing your job well?
You would hope so, but let's take trunk-based development as a perfect example.
Okay.
This is the practice where all developers merge their code into a single main branch, the trunk, very, very frequently, sometimes multiple times a day.
As opposed to the old way where you'd work on your own private version of the code for 3 weeks until it was perfect.
Exactly. The old feature branch model. Now, just imagine the anxiety of merging your unfinished code every single day. If you break the trunk, you break it for everyone.
The entire team stops.
The entire team grinds to a halt. It requires immense discipline. It requires writing a ton of automated tests before you even write the code.
Yeah.
And honestly, it feels slower at first.
It feels risky.
It feels incredibly risky. Now, a manager who doesn't understand the long-term vision, who doesn't provide that support,
They're going to freak out.
they're going to freak out. They'll look at that and say, why are we stopping to write all these tests? Why is the build broken again? This is inefficient. Just go back to the old way where you coded in a silo for a month and we'll deal with the mess later.
Ah, I see it now. So the friction is that initial learning curve and the very real risk of failure along the way.
Yes. A transformational leader steps into that gap and says, I understand this is painful today. I know we might break the build a few times this week, but I support this transition because I know it leads to higher speed and higher quality later on. They absorb the risk.
And they absorb the blame from their own bosses, too.
Ideally, yes. If the trunk breaks, that leader defends the practice to the rest of the organization rather than punishing the person who broke it. That's the air cover.
What about shifting left on security? That's another one listed in the box.
Shift left is a great term. It just means doing security activities earlier in the development timeline, moving them to the left,
So instead of a big, scary security audit at the very end of the project,
which always delays the release and makes everyone angry and points fingers.
you integrate security checks while you're actually writing the code?
Exactly. Which sounds completely logical, but again, I assume it slows down the daily work of a developer.
It does. It adds what they feel is friction to their day. Huh. I can't just push this code. I have to stop and fix this vulnerability first. It requires new tools, new training. If the leader doesn't fight for the budget to buy those security tools, or for the time for the team to learn how to use them, the team simply cannot do it.
So the super leader doesn't write the security code themselves.
No. But they buy the shovel so the team can actually dig the trench.
Okay, so the diagram is basically saying leadership enables technical practices, which in turn results in high performance.
Exactly. It's a chain reaction. And if you break that link in the middle, if you have the great leader but you don't actually implement the practices, you get nothing.
And I'd add that if you try to implement the practices without the leadership support, your team will just burn out trying to sustain them against all the organizational inertia.
That clarifies the twist perfectly. The top 10% of leaders only succeed because they successfully encouraged and protected their teams while they adopted these difficult, disciplined engineering habits.
Correct. The direct output of their leadership isn't just success. The output is the enablement of these powerful capabilities.
That is a profound shift for anyone listening who manages people. Your job isn't to make them work harder. Your job is to enable the practices that make the work, well, work better.
Well put. You're not a taskmaster. You are an architect of the environment.
Okay, let's zoom in a bit here. We talked about leaders in this abstract, inspiring sense. But the source material has a whole section dedicated specifically to the manager.
Yes. And this is where the rubber really meets the road.
We're transitioning from influence to direct responsibility, budgets, hiring, firing, project schedules, all the unglamorous stuff.
The things that actually occupy, 90% of a manager's day?
There is a bit of a stereotype in the DevOps and Agile world, and the source acknowledges it. The middle manager is often painted as the villain, the clay layer.
The frozen middle. I've heard that one a lot.
Right. The idea is that the executives up top have this grand vision, and the engineers at the bottom have the talent and desire. But the middle managers are these conservative holdouts who just block everything because they're afraid of change.
It's a very common trope. And to be fair, sometimes it's true. We've all seen it.
Sure.
But the research argues that in high-performing organizations, middle managers are actually critical. They're the linchpin that connects that high-level strategy to the day-to-day execution.
Their main job is removing obstacles.
That is their primary function in a high-performing org. If an engineer on their team says, I can't deploy my code because the firewall approval process takes 3 weeks, the manager's job isn't to say, well, you better go fill out the form. The manager's job is to go to the security director and say, this process is killing our velocity. We need to work together to fix this.
So they are the snowplow for the team.
They are the snowplow. They create the clear path so the team can move fast.
The source gives some very specific, really practical examples of how managers can invest in their teams. And it's not just about paying them more, though I'm sure no one listening would object to that.
Chuckles. No, a raise is always a welcome investment. But these are investments in knowledge and capability, which often have a longer-term payoff.
Let's run through a few of these because I think they're really actionable for anyone listening. First up, training budgets.
This seems obvious, but the nuance in the source is important. It's not just about having a budget, it's about making it accessible.
Oh, I've worked at so many places where there was technically a training budget, but getting it approved was like applying for a mortgage.
Exactly. Fill out this 5-page form, get 3 signatures from VPs, write an essay proving how this online course directly relates to our Q3 strategic goals. By the time you do all that, the course is over.
Right.
A high-performing manager says, here is your budget for the year, use it. I trust you to find things that will make you and the team better.
It signals autonomy and trust.
It signals that the organization values the individual's curiosity and growth.
Okay, next one. Conference attendance.
This is huge for cross-pollination of ideas. If your team only ever talks to each other, you become an echo chamber. You start to think your bad habits are normal.
Oh, everyone takes 3 weeks to deploy simple change, right? That's just how software is made.
Exactly. Then you go to a conference and you hear someone on stage say, we deploy 50 times a day, and your brain just explodes. That's incredibly valuable.
But the source adds a crucial condition here.
It does. It's not just about sending them. It's about encouraging staff to go and then requiring them to come back and summarize what they learned for the rest of the team.
I love that. It turns the trip from a POC into a value add for the whole group. What did you see? What ideas can we steal?
It creates a culture of shared learning. It changes the trip from a vacation to a scouting mission for the team.
Here's one that I think sounds really fun. Internal DevOps days.
This is borrowing a fantastic format from the global community. DevOps days are these local 1 or 2 day conferences that mix prepared talks with something called open spaces,
Kuchar.
unstructured discussion groups. Anyone can propose a topic, and you just go and talk about it. The research suggests doing this internally.
So, getting the whole engineering organization together for a day, maybe someone from the database team gives a talk on a new technology, and someone from the front-end team runs a discussion group on accessibility.
Precisely. It breaks down silos, it lets people shine who maybe don't usually get the spotlight, and it spreads knowledge virally through the company. It's surprisingly effective for how cheap it is to run.
Speaking of investing time, we have to talk about yak days.
Chuckles, the yak, yes. We have to explain this term.
Please do, for the uninitiated.
So yak shaving is a term in programming and engineering. It describes that situation where you set out to do a simple task, say fix a typo in a text file.
Okay, sounds easy.
But to fix the typo, you realize you need to update a library. But to update the library, you have to update the operating system. And to do that, you need to get a new security permission from IT. And suddenly, you find yourself 3 hours later filling out a form, feeling like you're metaphorically shaving a yak in the Himalayas just to fix a typo.
It's all the tedious background maintenance work that gets in the way of the real work.
It is the dishes in the sink of your kitchen. It's the technical debt.
I can just imagine a CFO listening to this and hearing, so you want a whole day where we don't do any real work?
A day where we don't ship any new features. That is the fear. But let's stick with the kitchen analogy. Imagine a restaurant that serves amazing food, but they are so busy cooking and serving that they never, ever stop to wash the dishes.
Eventually you run out of clean plates.
You run out of plates, the knives get dull, the floor gets greasy and slippery. The chefs start spending 20 minutes just looking for a clean spoon. Their efficiency plummets. That is technical debt.
So the yak day is the manager, the head chef, saying, stop cooking. Close the dining room for the day. Everybody, we're washing the dishes, we're sharpening the knives.
Exactly. And the research shows, unequivocally, that teams who dedicate time to this, whether it's a formal yak day or Google's famous 20% time, they actually move faster in the long run.
Because they have clean plates and sharp knives?
Because they have clean plates. But here is the hard part for that manager. When the VP of sales comes storming in screaming, "Why didn't we ship the new login feature today?" The manager has to stand in that gap and say, because we were sharpening our knives so we can ship the next 10 features even faster.
That takes real courage. That connects right back to inspirational communication and supportive leadership, doesn't it?
It's all connected. You can't have a high-performing kitchen if it's filthy.
Let's move to section 4. We've talked about the leader, the manager, and the investments in time and training. Now let's talk about the vibe, the engineering culture.
The invisible water we're all swimming in every day.
The source material explicitly links cross-functional collaboration with a strong team culture. It talks about the silo problem.
And silos are the natural state of large organizations. It's just human nature. Developers hang out with developers. Operations people hang out with other ops people. And the security team sits in a dark room.
Chuckles, plotting.
Shekels, plotting against everyone. But the research is clear that high performance comes from breaking down those walls. And the currency you use to break down walls is trust.
How do you build trust? It feels like such a soft concept. Are we talking about doing trust falls at the company offsite?
No, definitely no trust falls. The source defines it in a very practical way. Trust is built on kept promises, open communication, and predictable behavior, especially in stressful situations.
Predictable behavior in stressful situations. That one really resonates. If things go wrong, the site goes down at 3 a.m., and the operations team immediately starts screaming and blaming the development team, trust is gone.
It's gone instantly. And what happens the next time there's a problem?
You hide information. You don't tell them about that little bug you found because you don't want to get yelled at. And poof, now you have a silo again.
And the whole system is weaker for it.
So what's the strategy to fix this? The source suggests something I think is pretty bold. Lateral moves.
Yes, actively encouraging practitioners to move between departments for a period of time.
So take a software developer and let them work on the ops team for 6 months. Or take a QA engineer and have them sit with the product management team.
Exactly. Now, this sounds great in theory, but I can hear the objection already.
It sounds inefficient, right?
Yeah.
You have a skilled developer who now doesn't know how to do the ops work.
Yeah.
They're going to be slow and need a lot of help.
They will be slow for the first month, no question. But think about the incredible long-term payoff. When that developer goes back to their dev team,
They now have empathy. They understand why the ops team is always asking for better logging.
not only that, they have a friend in the other department.
That is the secret weapon, the natural point person. So instead of sending a formal ticket to a faceless queue called the ops team,
Which feels like a bureaucracy you have to fight.
you're sending a direct message to Steve, the guy who used to sit next to me and taught me about monitoring.
I know Steve. Steve is an idiot. If he's telling me this is important, I'll listen to Steve.
It's just human nature that social capital greases the wheels of the entire organization.
Absolutely.
There is a fantastic story in the source that illustrates this just beautifully. It's about Google and something they call Dirty.
Yes, from Kripa Krishnan, who was the director of cloud operations at Google. A great example.
So Dirty stands for disaster recovery testing. Now, most companies do some form of this. You unplug a server and see if the backup system kicks in. It's a purely technical test.
Right. Did the load balancer work? Check the box. We're done.
But Kripa's approach was fundamentally different. Her aha moment was realizing that Dirt isn't just about testing the software. It's about testing the relationships.
This is just brilliant. They intentionally designed tests that require engineers from different groups that maybe never talk to each other, to interact during a simulated failure.
So they'll break something in a really weird way that forces the database person to get on an emergency call with the front-end person and the networking person to figure it out together.
It's a fire drill for your social capital.
What a great way to put it.
Because when a real disaster strikes, when a whole AWS region goes down or a fiber cable gets cut by a backhoe, you do not want people introducing themselves for the very first time on that emergency bridge call.
No. You want them to say, "Oh, hi, Sarah. Good to hear your voice. This is just like that drill we ran last month."
There's an amazing quote in the source about this. It says, "For Dirk-style events to be successful, an organization first needs to accept system and process failures as a means of learning."
That is the key, isn't it? If you are terrified of failure, if you punish failure, you can't run these kinds of tests.
But if you do run them, you build an organization that is resilient, not just technically, but socially, which is often more important.
It really challenges the traditional idea that efficiency means everyone stays in their own lane and does their one job. Sometimes real efficiency comes from forcing a controlled collision.
Controlled collisions, I like that, yes.
This leads us perfectly into our last big section, the climate of learning and tooling. You just mentioned accepting failure as a means of learning. This touches on the now famous concept of blameless postmortems.
We talk about this a lot in the industry, but it's hard to do in practice. When something breaks, what is your first instinct? Do you hunt for a witch to burn, or do you hunt for the flaw in the system that allowed the human to make a mistake?
The blame-oriented culture asks, who broke the build?
Whereas the learning culture asks, how did our system allow a broken build to get deployed in the first place?
Right. And if failure is punished, innovation just stops, period.
If I know I'll get yelled at, or worse, fired for trying something new that fails, I will never try anything new. I will stick to the safe, slow, old way of doing things forever.
So the manager's role is to create that psychological safety, to be the first one to say, this outage is a gift. It's a free lesson. Let's learn everything we can from it.
And to formalize that learning, the source mentions the importance of demo days.
And not just demos for the executives or the stakeholders.
No, this is different. This is demos for the teams themselves, creating regular, low-stake spaces to just celebrate the work. Hey, look at this cool thing I built this week. It fosters pride, but it also spreads ideas.
It's like creating an internal marketplace of ideas inside the company.
It is. Oh, wait, you solved that authentication problem. I have the exact same problem on my project. Can I steal your code?
Okay, now I want to talk about tool choice, because there is a surprisingly strong correlation in the data here, and I feel like this is where we might trigger some people who work in IT procurement.
Chuckles. We might. It's a sensitive topic in large enterprises.
The data shows that one of the major contributors to developer productivity and job satisfaction is whether employees can choose their own tools.
Imagine that. Professionals like to choose their own equipment. A carpenter has a favorite brand of hammer. A chef has a favorite knife that fits their hand perfectly. A developer has a favorite text editor or IDE.
But in big companies, the overwhelming instinct is to standardize. Everyone in this company will use tool X because we got a bulk discount.
We signed a 5-year enterprise agreement, so you will use this clunky, slow piece of software whether you like it or not.
And the research says that is a massive mistake.
It's a huge mistake. Teams that are empowered to choose their own tools consistently drive better software delivery performance.
Why do you think that is? Is it just about comfort and familiarity?
That's part of it. It's proficiency. If I know all the keyboard shortcuts from my editor, I'm just going to be faster. But it's also something deeper. It's about autonomy and respect.
Playing that.
If I can choose my tool, I feel ownership over my craft and my work. If I am forced to use a tool that I hate, a tool that is slow, a tool that crashes all the time, I feel like a cog in a machine. I feel disrespected as a professional.
The text has a really pointed warning here. It says something like, if an organization absolutely must standardize, the finance and procurement departments must act in the interest of the engineering teams, not the other way around.
That is the golden rule right there. The goal of procurement should be to maximize engineering productivity, not to find the lowest possible line item cost on a spreadsheet.
But this spreadsheet doesn't have a column for lost productivity or developer frustration. It only shows that they saved $100 on a license.
Exactly. And that is why you need a transformational leader to bridge that gap, to go to the finance department and explain the very real but invisible cost of making a bad decision.
Okay, finally, let's touch on monitoring. The source links proactive monitoring to both performance and job satisfaction.
This comes back to reducing anxiety. If you are flying a plane in the dark with no instruments, you are going to be incredibly stressed. Every little noise makes you panic.
Did I just crash the server? I have no idea.
But if you have a beautiful dashboard in front of you showing your altitude, your speed, your engine temperature, your fuel, you are calm. You can make informed decisions. Monitoring isn't just about catching errors after they happen. It's about giving the team visibility and feedback.
It's transparency.
It's knowing the impact of your work in real time. Hey, I just deployed my code, and I can see on the graph that latency went down by 10%.
That is so satisfying.
Yeah.
That is a dopamine hit for an engineer.
And happy, satisfied teams stay longer and build better stuff.
It all connects. It's all one big system.
So we've covered a huge amount of ground today. We started with this idea that leaders are facing displacement if they don't transform their teams.
A pretty scary thought to start with. Then we broke down those 5 dimensions of transformational leadership vision: inspiration, stimulation, support, and recognition.
The big 5.
We looked at that critical indirect effect, how great leaders provide the air cover for the hard technical practices like trunk-based development or shifting left on security.
Right, they enable the how.
Then we looked at the manager's practical role in investing in training and conference travel and in giving teams time for yak days.
And building that culture of trust, letting people choose their tools, and giving them the visibility they need through monitoring.
It's a really comprehensive ecosystem, isn't it? You can't just pick one of these things and hope for the best.
You really can't. They all reinforce each other.
So if we had to summarize the big so what here for everyone listening, transformational leadership isn't just soft skills. It is a measurable, quantifiable predictor of high performance in technology.
Absolutely. It is the catalyst. It is the difference between a team that is just treading water and a team that is actually innovating and winning.
And crucially, managers amplify this by putting their money and their time where their mouth is.
By removing those obstacles, by creating space for the yak shaving, by letting people fail safely and learn from it.
I want to leave our listeners with a provocative thought that comes right from the source material. We talked about that dimension of intellectual stimulation, the idea of forcing us to rethink our basic assumptions.
Right, the dangerous questions.
So here's the question for you, the listener. If you looked at your team or your organization today, are the leaders removing obstacles so you can do your best work?
Or are they maybe trying to do the work themselves?
Or, and this is the tough one, are they the obstacle?
That is the critical question to ask yourself.
Yeah.
And I'll add one more thought to that. We hear the phrase knowledge is power all the time.
Yeah.
But the best managers, the best leaders, they don't hoard power. They give power to those who have the knowledge. They push authority and decision-making down to the people with their hands on the keyboard.
That is powerful. The goal of leadership isn't to control. It's to empower. All right, so we challenge you to try one investment tactic this week. I mean, you probably can't overhaul your entire company culture by Friday, but you can probably find a way to schedule a yak day.
Or just start smaller. Ask one question in one meeting that challenges a basic assumption. Why do we still do it this way? Just start there.
Start there. Thanks for diving deep with us today. We'll see you on the next one.
Take care, everyone.